Development of the New York Immigration Coalition. We appreciate the opportunity to testify today on such an important issue. A year ago, efforts by Congress and the White House to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill passed. Since then, the immigration debate has been fueled primarily by frustration and anger, and the only proposals that seem to gain traction are those that focus on enforcement as the solution. New York City and its leaders have demonstrated tremendous leadership in not following their course and in acknowledging the contributions that have been made to our city and the importance of investing in immigrant communities so that we all benefit. We're here today to urge you to work with us to help change the tone of the national discourse on immigration. The New York Immigration Coalition has launched a Truth About Immigrants campaign to shift the terms of the debate so that we as a nation can arrive at real solutions that address the legitimate concerns around immigration. More than 20 organizations, immigrant and non-immigrant, have come together to engage diverse audiences in an honest dialogue about immigration. We have 12 million people living here without legal status in a nation that prides itself on being a nation of laws. Whatever side of the fence, so to speak, you might be on, there's general consensus that that's an issue to be reckoned with, and there's not so much consensus on how. Immigrants come to escape poverty and political unrest, and they come for freedom and opportunity and family. They also come because we need them. At a basic level, we need workers. We have an aging workforce and a declining birth rate, and baby boomers on the verge of retirement, and we simply don't have enough native-born workers. Not at the less skilled end of the labor force, where we face shortages among farm workers and others. Not at the high skill end of the labor force, where we're facing shortfalls in fields like nursing and high tech. Immigrants, of course, aren't the only answer to our labor woes. We need to shore up our native-born workforce. We've seen more than a decade of government cutbacks in the very worker training that provides real opportunity for economic advancement. We have schools that graduate students without skills to participate in the economy, and we have skyrocketing dropout rates among African Americans, among others. We need to strengthen our math and science education so more native-born workers can fill high-tech jobs. We need to fund the Pell Grant system adequately so more people can go to college. And we need to enforce labor laws so employers aren't motivated to hire cheap and easily exploited undocumented workers. Given how poorly our nation has invested in its native-born workforce, is it wonder that such workers are feel threatened by immigrants? So even though most economists agree that immigration has little to no negative impact on wages or employment, and often has a positive impact, the fact is, if you feel that you can't get a leg up, you'll focus on the flesh and blood person down the street that has the job you want, and you'll be angry if that person is undocumented. And the government that's failed to invest in your education or job readiness is going to prefer that you focus on the undocumented immigrant as the cause of your woes. And too much of the current debate is being driven by politicians and pundits who stoke that very resentment. So why is that person here, and why didn't he come legally? And how equipped are we to respond to a need for labor? Don't ask. At the high school end of the spectrum, the cap for high school visas is set so low that businesses have to outsource those jobs. The Partnership for New York City has just issued a report showing how we're losing our global competitiveness because our immigration and visa policies make it impossible to hire the workforce we need. At the low skill end of the spectrum, the millions upon millions of jobs in the service sector, construction, and so forth that have fueled much of our economic growth, we issue just 5,000 immigration visas a year. Is it any wonder that we have illegal immigration? And families face unconscionable delays in reuniting. You can bring your spouse over and it can take 5 years, longer than many marriages last. You kiss your sweet 7-year-old goodbye, and in that time she can join you. She's deep in the throes of adolescence. What would you do? You may decide it's worth it to be here with your family while you wait for your papers to come through. Live with the fear of deportation or be separated from your loved ones. People make hard choices. Which brings me to a point about the undocumented population. Their members of families live in homes with U.S. citizens and permanent residents. They are not a distinct population that can be extricated wholesale. The avenues for obtaining legal status are narrow, labyrinthine, and studded with roadblocks along the way, and they don't match up with reality. Hence, 12 million people without status. But since the immigration reform bill collapsed, the trend has been on enforcement as the way to deal with it. But enforcement is what we've been doing all along. Beginning in the 90s, we created a much less welcoming environment. We denied food stamps, Medicaid, and SSI even to legal immigrants. Undocumented immigrants have never been eligible for such help. We beefed up enforcement. Border Patrol spending increased by more than 500% from 1986 to 2002, and detention and removal by 750%. We put tough measures in place, automatically deporting people without hearing, detaining asylum seekers, restricting judicial review. Last year, we deported 276,000 people. That's like kicking out the entire population of Flushing and Park Slope combined. This get-tough approach should have had an impact, no? Deterred folks from coming and pushed others to leave. In fact, the 1990s was numerically the highest immigration decade in our history, and high immigration rates continued. In spite of everything, immigrants still choose to make America home, despite the punitive environment, and despite the increasing danger in crossing the border that resulted in nearly 3,000 deaths between 1988 and today. Meaning immigrants come for work, freedom, and opportunity, not for a handout or an easy life. Enforcement alone won't solve the problem because it addresses the symptom, illegal immigration, and not the cause, an inadequate framework for legal immigration. And even with the exponential growth in enforcement spending, it will still take some 50 years to deport the undocumented. And at what cost? A study put the cost of deporting all undocumented conservatively at $230 billion over 5 years, as if it were possible. That's 4 times the size of the budget of the city of New York. And at what further cost? When Riverside, New Jersey passed an ordinance that would punish employers who hire undocumented immigrants or landlords who rent to them, hundreds of immigrants left the town and the local economy dried up. Riverside ultimately rescinded the ordinance, having realized that all of those immigrants, instead of being a problem, were actually crucial to the town's economic vitality. America has always been a creative nation tackling complex issues of racial unity. But we're mired right now in an uncreative and ineffectual mode, and held more by our frustration with the situation and anger than by a visionary sense of who we are as a nation and how we can uphold our highest values, which include both an adherence to the rule of law and a generosity, compassion, and recognition of the inherent dignity and worth of all people. Aristotle said, law is order, and good law is good order. The reverse then is also true. Bad law is disorder, and that is where we are right now. You cannot have 12 million people living in the shadows, acknowledged with a wink and a nod, and trot it out as red meat when it's politically expedient to do so, and pretend that we are a nation of laws. We must do better because the alternative is unthinkable. The continued existence of what amounts to an American underclass, a continued draining of resources for ineffectual enforcement, the continued cheap trick of setting people against each other while ignoring the critical social and economic issues that we as a nation must address. We can make sure that our leaders in Washington get real, that they address our broken immigration system by ensuring that the visas we make available are adequate for our needs, that family unity is honored, that undocumented immigrants have an opportunity to gain equal status, that we invest in developing our native-born workforce, and that workplace protections are enforced so that all workers benefit, and that we target enforcement strategically so our resources are not squandered, our borders are secure, and we return to being a nation that upholds the rule of law and protects the civil rights and liberties of all. Nature helped to make this happen. We're proud to be in a city with a city council who's demonstrated its leadership by strengthening immigrant communities through adult literacy and citizenship in ESL and legal services. New York City is a model for others, so please help change the climate. We urge the City Council to pass a resolution that calls for an honest dialogue around immigration and rejects the politics of division that are driven by anger and fear. Provide an alternative model for local leaders across the nation to follow, and that will inspire leaders at the national level to stop running scared on this issue. Thank you. We appreciate having had this opportunity to speak with you today.